For this next tutorial, I want you to start with your edit Photoshop document that you had for the last tutorial. And I want to show you a quick trick on how to open it fairly quickly. If you're using the same computer you used the day before, a quick way to open documents is if you go up to your Start Pearl and then you see the document or the program you are using. If you use this little arrow tab, you can quickly select any images or Photoshop documents that you had open the day before. Of course, you can always just go to Open Photoshop and say File Open through that tab as well. That's just a quick trick. So you should have this edited version with a bigger sky, and we should have this tree stretched over. Okay, we covered File, Edit, and Image already. The next tab in the upper tabs is the Layer tab. I'm not going to go over the Layer tab in too much depth because this tab is actually all contained within this Layers window, which exists over here, and I would prefer to show you how to do those on this tab because it's something you will always have open and you will be using quite frequently. Just so you can see the comparison, if you go here to this little half black, half circle, it will give you these layer adjustments, and if you go up to the Layer tab, you have the same ability, New Adjustment Layer. So this is just a kind of a duplicate of what's over here. There are a few other options in here that don't exist on this side, so if you can't find something in the Layers window, use the Layers tab. Otherwise, I will explain in more depth in the Layers tutorial. The next one you have is Type. So to use the Type tab, we need to go ahead and go to our T. Let's make a large type. I would say make it about 300, and I'll show you a couple of options within that. I'll actually say Victoria. That's where this picture is taken. So once you have that tab, what you want to do is go ahead and make your text box about the same size as the text itself. Then under Type, you have a couple of different options. You can convert to shape, which will make it like a graphic. You can rasterize the type layer, which then turns it into an image and allows you to edit it just as if it were a picture. You can warp your text, okay, which simply changes the shape of the text box itself. So go ahead and pick one of those options. Again, under that tab, there's also sub-tabs, things that change everything. So like we've talked about, under every option there are probably 4 or 5 other options. So just go ahead and play around with them to show me that you've tried it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our default arrow and we're going to go back to Type. And we're going to use this Extrude to 3D. This is the only 3D option you should use in Photoshop. If you use it on a picture, your computer will most definitely lag and maybe not work at all for quite a while. So if you're using the 3D option, it should only be on text, not pictures. Once that pops up, you can say yes. What it's going to give you is essentially a graph with several different axes that you can turn, play around with. You can move your text over, down, however you want to mess around with it. I like to close this little box right there. Once you are done, the way to get back to your other picture is over here. You'll see this 3D tab. You need to click on the Layers tab, and then you can click on your background picture. Every time you click back onto the text layer, it's going to continue giving you that 3D option. So my suggestion is once you have it set the way you would like it, to right click on your layer and say Rasterize 3D. Now it's just simply a picture that can be moved around wherever you want to locate it. You can leave it in 3D. I just find it a little annoying to continually having that graph. The other options under Type are also located in your character and paragraph windows, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Your Select tab has to do with these upper 6 options, the ones that we learned the very first tutorial. So what I need you to do to talk about these select tools is I want you to make sure you're on your text layer, make sure you rasterize it, and I want you to select in the blank space. Under the Select option, there's a couple of things you can do. There's Deselect, which we've talked about, which is Control D, and then there's this tab that's called Inverse. I find this tab really useful when you're trying to select a complex image that has a very simple background. When I hit inverse, it selected the words themselves, which is very nice considering there's nothing in the background of this layer. If I turn off my background layer, you'll see that on the text, it's a blank background. So if I wanted to select the words, instead of clicking on the words and holding Shift and continuing to add all the different colors I want to pick, I simply grab the background layer and I can say select inverse, and it works really well. You can also use the select tab that says select similar, which does exactly what it sounds like. Let's say the O in Victoria was blank, like the background. I'm just going to do that quickly. If this O were, say, oops, make sure you're on the correct layer, that helps. Say it looks like that. And I come and I select, and I see all of these checked background, which means it's transparent, and I want to select that one right there. I can hold Shift, or if there were lots of those, if let's say the A was cut out and the C and all of those different things, I can say select similar, and it will select anything that has the same background. I can then use my select inverse. I have my words selected now. The other options under select, you can say select all layers underneath here, so it will change not only the text layer, but it will change what's behind in the background layer. You can use what's called color range. Okay, so to use color range, what I want you to do is hit Control D, and then you can say select color range, and you click on the picture, and it's going to select anything that's similar in that color. If you want to make lots of selections, you can use this plus, and everything you click on, it's going to select any colors that are similar to what you've just selected. If I hit OK, it gives me that selection. That's a difficult one to use, but could be useful depending on what type of picture you're editing. Go ahead and hit Control D again. The other things that you can use are quick mask mode. I'm going to show you how to do that in a different tutorial where we're talking about how to make good selections. So the last one I want to show you is, let's just say, let's just select the background sky for right now. And let's say we said select inverse, and we started to select around the house, right? We wanted to get just the house, and we want to get rid of all this green, so we're holding Alt on the keyboard. And we come around, and we've been doing all these selections to get rid of the green background, and the bell's about to ring. What you can do to save your selection is you just simply go up to Select, okay, and then you go down to Save Selection. Give it something really obvious, like if you're trying to select the house and say House, okay, and then you can close it and don't worry about your selections, and then when you reopen it the next day, you come over here to this Channels button, and you'll see this channel that says House. And if I turn that house layer on, I can see where my selection was. So all I need to do is be in my magic wand. I grab the white. Then I go back to my Layers tab. So you have to turn off your black and white layer, black and white channel. And then I go back to Layers, and I have that selection. So that's a really helpful thing if you're making a really complex selection and you run out of time. The next thing we're going to talk about is filter. And I want you to do these filters to the text layer because it will take longer to make these changes to the background layer. Plus, I'm not a big fan of filters over pictures. If they're too complex, they start to interrupt the whole point of the picture in the first place. So go to your text layer. Under Filter, there's a couple of things I want you to look at. Start with Filter Gallery. And if you're in second period, you've already seen how to do this. If you're in sixth, you haven't quite seen these. So I would like you to take some time. All of these different things are simply going to give you different filters. It's going to affect the way that it looks. And again, under every single one of those, there's also options to change the overall look. So you can go through, find one you like, go ahead and save something. Any one of these is fine. You can use any of these sub options. Just pick one and hit OK when you're ready. Other options under the filter We're not going to use wide angle or lens correct unless you have a specific reason to in a different tutorial, and then they will explain how to use it. I will show you quickly how to use the liquify tool. I had a lot of fun with this with the 6th graders when they came to second period. But it does also have can be useful in different ways. If you're trying to shrink something up or make it look a little bit smaller or bigger, this is a good way of doing it. There's also bad ways of doing it. If you remember the picture of the guy with the big biceps, he used what's called the bloat tool to bloat his biceps. As you see, it's bloating underneath there, and clearly did not do it very well. But liquify does exactly what it sounds like. It essentially takes whatever's in that circle and moves it around. You can change your brush size over here. I wouldn't make it too big, as bigger the brush, the harder it is for Photoshop to process everything. There's the pucker tool, which is the opposite of bloat. It sucks everything into the vortex of that crosshair. There's the bloat tool, which blows everything up. And there's the liquify, which moves everything around. So if you like it, you can hit OK. If you just want to play around with it and hit cancel, you can. Okay, now you have a strange looking text, most likely. The next option under the filter that I'd like you to look at is these sub-tabs. They are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go through them completely. The blur tool can be really useful if you are working on a project and say similar to the one from the last tutorial that I did, where it's a picture of me and then the background was blurry. Maybe you took a picture and you wanted the black background to be blurry, but you couldn't make it. You can select your background and then use these blur tools to give it the effect of a blurred background. All the other ones are just something you can play around on. Just pick a few, play around with how they look. Noise adds the kind of grainy look to it. Pixelate obviously pixelates. Sharpen can be used if your picture is a little blurry, but it doesn't make a bad picture look good. It's just a way of sharpening and creating more contrast. So go ahead and play around with those. Video and other we don't need to use, and browsing online you don't need to use. The last option you have under this one, the last two options you have are view and window. What I don't want you to use is the 3D tab. If you use the 3D tab, it's going to create a lot of issues with your Photoshop. We do not have computers powerful enough to do 3D effects. Under view is the exact same thing it was in InDesign. You can zoom in, zoom out, you can change your screen mode. If you want to use rulers, the way we did in InDesign with the guides, that's where they can be found. And then under window, you have all of your different sub-windows. So this is where if you see something over here on my screen and you're not sure where I got it from, it's probably under Windows. The three that you should have open 90% of the time are history, character, and probably paragraph, and the one you will have open all the time is layers for sure. You will probably also 99% of the time have your history bar open. Any of these other ones, essentially they are bigger versions of whatever you see up here. If I were to click on the text, you'll notice I have the condensed version at the top. So if you can't find the options you need in the condensed version, then you should go to Window and click on one of these outer tabs. Most of them are open on these little sub-tabs, so go ahead and just click through those so you have a better idea. There's the brushes, as we talked about earlier. You can see something similar in a condensed version over there, and here is a lot more options and brushes. Okay, you have your paragraph, all your different things. So the next thing we're going to talk about in the next tutorial is going to be layers and the different complexities within these sub-tabs. Before closing this program, what I would like for you to do is do a save as. This is currently saved as edit an image. I would like for you to save it as, let's save it as layer and filter. So you started with it as edit an image, but what I would like for you to do is save it as layer and filter. If for any reason you saved along the way and it saved over the edit an image, that's okay. But go ahead and save it just so that I know you finished this tutorial.